Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Lent series focusing on species at risk. Today, we are going to be talking about an Ontario species called the caribou. So in Ontario, we have two different species of caribou. We have the boreal population and the Eastern Migratory Population. Now, in total, there are about only 5,000 caribou left, combined, both populations. The boreal population is threatened, whereas the migratory is of special concern. Now, caribou are part of the ungulate category, so a cousin of both the moose and the deer. And they're really cool. I really like this species. So the boreal population will spend most of its life in the boreal forest, whereas the eastern migratory population will rotate between the tundra and the boreal forest. Now, there are quite a few threats that impact the caribou species, and one of these in particular is disturbance. So this includes disturbances mostly from humans, and it includes things like ATVs, people going into caribou habitat, scaring them, disturbing them, forest fires, a lot of resource exploitation that happens up north in Ontario has really impacted the caribou population as well. And climate change has been a really big influence. So essentially, with the climate changing, a lot of ranges for different animals have been impacted. So both caribou and other animals. And one of the problems that's happening for the caribou population is that deer are being pushed further up north, and they're bringing something called brain worm, which is fatal to both moose and caribou populations. So there's a lot of things that are impacting the caribou populations, and a lot of organizations are trying to lobby the federal government to put more protections in place. Part of that is due to the fact that for a lot of the species at risk legislation, the legislation is pretty lax on the resource sector, particularly for logging and forestry. So because caribou populations need a really big range because they go throughout the boreal forest, and the eastern migratory population in particular has a really big range because they move between different species, not different species, sorry, different areas. So because there's been a lot of habitat fragmentation due to resource exploitation and the impacts of roads and stuff like that, the corridor that caribou have to be able to migrate and travel has really dwindled, and it is a big shame. So there are different things that you can do. One of the things I always think is super important, especially for any species at risk, is if you see a species at risk, don't disturb the species at risk unless you are a trained professional who knows how to handle different species at risk. But I love the program iNaturalist, and citizen science has become such an important tool for research and studies, and can give so much data on population sizes. So anytime you see a cool species, or honestly, iNaturalist is a great way to find out just the things that are around you if you don't know what a species is. So different apps like that can really help you help other people who are trying to help different species. So part of Don't Disturb Caribou can come in a lot of different shapes and forms. Obviously, a lot of us are in southern Ontario, and it's very unlikely that we will see caribou, but a lot of what I'm saying goes for most animals. So be extra vigilant. If you take in to account activities such as ATVing, if you're an avid ATVer, make sure you're informed about what areas different animals frequent most, and try and keep your disturbance, making sure you're only going on proper ATV trails, not going off path, things like that. And if you go backcountry camping a lot, or camping in a lot of different places, make sure you leave as little impact as possible so that you're not disturbing the ecosystem around you. Something I've stressed a lot during this series is to be informed. You can't take action on an issue if you don't even know about it. So you can talk to your friends and family about the things that you're learning, or about different species that are important to you, and just having that mentality of just people being aware that these issues are happening can be a big help. And then there's a lot of actions that we all know about things to take action against climate change, such as looking at our consumptive choices, lobbying governments. There are a lot of small things that we can do that can still make an impact. I like to look at it like this. Even like a lot of people say that individual impacts don't make a difference, and that it needs to come on bigger changes such as legislature or from companies. And on one hand, I agree with that. Like there does need to be a lot of action on a higher level, but I also think a lot of those organizations reflect individual choices and individual choices as a collective. So I think there's a huge debate on that topic anyway, but I think individually we can all make a difference, especially if we're acting together and making good choices. So I hoped you enjoyed learning a little bit about the caribou species and some of the threats they're facing. Um, so I hope you have a great rest of your day.